Welcome to the Staff Wellbeing and Education training provided by the Wakefield Educational Psychology Service. The purpose of this training is to focus on promoting your well-being in order to help you to manage and look after yourselves so that you can support the children and young people that you work with. It's essential that you take care and consider your own well-being first before you can effectively care for and support others. The aims of this session are presented on the screen. As you can see, we will focus on appreciating risk factors that affect our well-being, think about our daily stresses, identify protective factors, and think about how we and others can effectively promote our emotional well-being and mental health. It's hard to turn on the TV, pick up a paper, turn on the radio, or even have a conversation with others without being able to escape the news and the impact of the virus for us all. Never before have we been faced with so many stats to consider, new vocabulary such as social distancing, rule of six, isolating, furlough, shielding, vulnerable, bubbles, and hands, face, space, which have all become part of our daily interactions. The Happy Birthday song has now taken on a new meaning, and we can't think of it without thinking of washing our hands. We even have to remember our face masks and sanitizers whilst checking we have our keys and phone. Our daily lives have been impacted on hugely, and the little things that we took for granted are now unable to enjoy, such as going out for a meal, hugging loved ones. Just because this is being expressed as a new normal does not mean that we should automatically be able to accept and cope with this. We're all dealing with this in our own way, and different restrictions are affecting us all in many ways. A recent survey highlights that teacher stress remains high, and these stresses are impacting on the well-being of those within the profession. Many teachers are leaving the profession as a result of the volume of workload, not feeling valued, seeking better work-life balance, unnecessary paperwork, a target-driven culture, unreasonable demands from managers, and lack of resources. This, combined with the varied mental health support available for staff and additional pressures of having to plan and prepare for teaching live lessons within a virtual world, has increased these pressures. According to the Learning Policy Institute, citing DFE data, around 8% of teachers leave the profession every year, and that was prior to COVID-19. The Teachers' Wellbeing Index highlights that barriers still remain in terms of teachers feeling able to reach out for support and share the impact of these pressures on mental health. Teachers and support staff have continued to plan, deliver, and teach children throughout this pandemic. Despite the media stating schools are closed, they are not. They have remained open with teachers and support staff continuing to deliver face-to-face and virtual learning. Let's not forget the support that school staff have offered the most disadvantaged children, delivering resources to children at home as well as coordinating free school meals to ensure that they remain safe and well. Comments made in the media have no doubt made school staff feel undervalued and unappreciated, despite the ever-increasing stresses faced to undertake the role. One of the biggest changes that school staff faced is that those of you who have children have now become their teacher as well as teacher to school pupils. Working from home and trying to educate your own children is no mean feat. It's at this point I would suggest you search YouTube for BBC's The Big Night In with David Tennant and Catherine Tate's character Lauren becoming insta-famous during lockdown learning. Being a teacher, parent, ICT specialist, lunchtime supervisor, nurse, and pet parent has brought about many daily challenges. Conflict resolution has also become a daily task for many within the home. It is understandable that juggling all of these pressures will have an impact on mental health. These pressures are even reflected in social media and memes, often with light being made of these increased responsibilities. It is fair to say that it's currently a turbulent time, and as a result our emotions are likely to be unpredictable, and that's okay. What is one's greatest experience may be another's negative. One day we may love that our partner is furloughed and have time with them at home, and at other times wish they would go back to work. For someone living alone, they may enjoy having their own space, and at other times need interaction with others. Take some time to consider how recent events have affected you. Talking about mental health unfortunately still has a stigma attached to it. As such, this acts as a barrier for many in reaching out and seeking support. There is no getting away from the fact that we all have it, and it is often helpful to think of our mental health as a continuum, which can vary day to day or even hour to hour. The stresses that are around us feed into our mental health, and then mental health impacts how we perceive, manage, and respond to these stresses. Such stressors can affect our mental health include our health and that of others, financial worries, family worries, and the demands this places on us, bereavement and losses in its widest sense, and the emotional demands of our job. These were all factors before the current situation, so it is understandable if they feel even bigger now. This is a visual that many of us will be familiar with. It highlights that stresses, wherever they come from, sometimes pour in, or at other times are constantly dripping, gradually filling up our stress bucket unbeknownst to us. Every individual bucket will vary in size and dimensions, and our own buckets may vary at different times. We need to work out how to turn the tap on when it is needed to stop the bucket overflowing and feeling that our stress is unmanageable. There may be many outlets that can help reduce the levels of stress we feel. It can be a helpful reminder that in order to be able to cope with whatever daily life presents to us, and to be the source of support for others that we might want to be, it is important to take the time and care for ourselves. Let's consider possible stress triggers. While some of these may be relevant for you, others may not. It's also possible that some of these triggers cause others to feel stressed even if they do not cause you any stress. Loss of connection. For some, change is stressful because of a loss of connection. Relationships are disrupted, and it may take time to build up the trust once had in those established connections. Loss of control. We like to be in control of our lives, our roles, and our direction, and change messes this up. Even if on the other end of the change we might have a sense of control, again, if we can't keep that control through the change, this is stressful, leading you to question, why aren't we there already? The direction we're going, if those leading through change are competent, will they get it right? Will we maintain focus and output through the change, or will we lose ground? Loss of competence. A loss of competence can be a source of stress, as we may question if our skills will be enough to help us succeed under the new conditions. Will we be given too many responsibilities that reduces our effectiveness? The lack of information that commonly surrounds a change, at least at first, can feed this concern about competence, as many questions are not able to be answered right away, and that contributes to the stress for some people. Loss of choice. Finally, stress can be triggered because of a concern over possible restrictions of our behaviours. Will I be involved in the change? Will I have a say? Will this new direction still allow for the possibilities that we had in the past, or is it closing some doors? Where is my place in this new scenario? Is my expertise and perspective valued? Martin Seligman is one of the founders of an area of psychology known as positive psychology. He developed the PERMA model to encourage reflection on 5 core elements that contribute to our mental well-being and overall sense of happiness. These factors also provide us with some protection at times of stress. We're going to take a look at each area. As we go along, try and think of what each aspect means for you. What does it look like in your life? What would you like to do more of? And what steps could you take towards this? In this model, the P stands for positive emotion. This can include having a positive outlook, focusing on the positives and having a sense of optimism. Positive emotion also involves the experience of joy and pleasure, intellectual stimulation and creativity. You can use this by adopting a positive perspective, remaining optimistic and trying to view your past, present and future from a constructive perspective. Do you currently make time for activities that provide a sense of joy and pleasure? This might involve something as simple as having something nice to eat or making sure you get enough sleep. E stands for engagement, and this refers to the activities that interest you and help you to remain focused and present, whilst also flooding your body with feel-good hormones and therefore increasing your sense of well-being. This will differ for different people. Playing sport, dancing, working on an interesting project, or engaging in a hobby are ways that might experience this. Think back over the last week. Were there any times that you're able to immerse yourself in an activity of your own choosing that fully engage your attention in a positive way? R stands for relationships. This refers to important people you have a connection with, family, friends, colleagues. As social animals, we thrive on positive connections with others. Experiencing isolation can have a negative impact on physical well-being. Focus on your relationships and finding new ways to stay connected. Maintaining physical distance should not be seen as a barrier to social connection. M for meaning. Having a meaning and purpose for our existence is an important driving factor towards a sense of fulfillment. For some people, this might come from religion or spirituality. For others, raising children, being part of a good cause, or working for a good organisation can provide us with a sense of purpose. It can help to reflect on how your contributions to a task impact on a positive outcome. And finally, A stands for accomplishment. Having goals and ambitions can help to provide a sense of accomplishment and satisfaction. It is important that goals are realistic and achievable. Are you able to think of any recent accomplishments that you've achieved? Were you able to acknowledge the positive outcomes of your actions? Thinking about the first step of the PEM model, positive emotions. Sometimes it can feel really difficult to try and see the positives in a situation that feels largely out of our control. Solution-focused thinking can be a helpful tool to help you to alter or reframe your perspective. Whilst there are many aspects of a difficult situation or event that we're unable to change, we do have control of how we think about it and how we control our emotional responses so that we can think flexibly and accurately. This enables us to be resilient. Only a very small change in any part of the problem system is needed to create a ripple effect in bringing about change or finding a solution. Think about a challenge you've recently experienced. Reflect on your own emotional responses. How did you feel and how did you act as a result of that feeling? Would there have been a better way to respond? Could the outcome have been different? Now think about a challenge you're currently experiencing. What is the outcome you're looking for? How will you know when you've achieved it? How are you feeling about it? Are strong feelings impacting on the way that you might respond? Encourage yourself to think calmly, flexibly, and accurately about the causes and implications of the situation. If you are unable to think calmly about the situation at this time, it could be helpful to prioritize self-care and well-being until a time when you feel ready to revisit the current problem. Can you identify 3 small good things about the current situation? Are there any small changes that you're able to make or influence that would improve the current situation in a small way? What are the first steps you could take to work gradually towards the end goal? There are many different options available to us to support our own well-being, ranging from physical aspects through to what might be regarded as more spiritual activities. Just as we all have our own individual stressors and signs of stress, we will also have our own preferences for actions and activities that help us. What works for us from one day to the next may vary. Trying out different things can be helpful to creating a toolkit of self-care. You may find that when you're feeling tense and overwhelmed with work, rhythmic and aerobic physical activity is effective. When you're feeling what you might label as worry, that short, mindful activity, even one that's only a few minutes long, is what helps. It's finding what works for you. At this time, social connection as part of our self-care is not as easy as we would like. We can still connect and get social through text, telephone, and video calls. When we feel stressed, we may feel that we don't have time for exercise or to take time for ourselves. However, it is essential that we prioritize time and activities, preferably on a daily basis. What do you already do that you know helps? What else could you try to increase your toolkit for self-care? If you've never tried mindfulness, perhaps you could download one of the many apps available, and it takes a few minutes today to find out how effective it can be for you. We often feel overwhelmed by the volume of tasks that we need to do, not just at work, but in our personal lives as well. When we feel stressed, it impacts on our cognitive skills and makes effective planning more difficult. We can then become ineffective in how we approach the endless to-do list. One simple approach that can help to increase effectiveness and rationalize workload is the Moscow approach, detailed here. By dividing up a sheet of paper into a simple grid with 4 squares, you can start to prioritize tasks and approach things in a much more ordered manner. Sometimes we need to allow ourselves to recognize that not every task is essential. Yes, you might want to do it, but realistically, with the number of hours you have available on that day, you can only focus on what must be done. The others can, and need to, wait. If at the end of the day you have dealt with the must tasks, then you've achieved what is needed for today. Whilst we've talked about self-care, it is important that we don't just try to individually shoulder responsibility for well-being. Social support and connection is hugely important, and sometimes the best 3 words that you can say to someone is, "Are you okay?" You might need to be ready to ignore the answer of, "Yeah, I'm fine." When you notice that someone is quieter than normal, looks more tired than normal, even when they say they are fine, be proactive and get them a cup of tea. Take 5 minutes to talk to them. Remind them that you are there if they need anything. Perhaps it would be helpful to set up a buddy system in work to check in on each other. No matter how busy, try to find time to stop and take a break with others, even if this means a virtual coffee break online. For senior leaders, there's never been a better time to review how you support staff well-being now and into the future. This graphic from Mental Health England is a helpful reminder to regularly check in on your well-being and that of others. Taking time to ask ourselves these questions and taking actions such as those we've talked about will help us to maintain well-being rather than reaching a point of crisis. Right now, take a few minutes to think through these questions. What are you going to do in response? Don't ignore signs and think they'll go away. Take time for self-care and maybe try out something new. If you feel concerned that you cannot manage through self-care alone, then talk to someone else and open up the opportunity for further support. There are a range of further sources of information and support should this be needed, including links to sources of direct support such as Turning Point and Education Support, which is an organisation offering dedicated mental health and wellbeing support to school staff. Thank you for taking the time to listen. We hope this has been helpful for you.